Down here, you've got a lot of bayous, you got a lot of marshland. Chambers County, I think we actually have more water than we do land.
The sun is starting to set on the wetlands of Chambers County. The sheriff's office receives a call about a body found along the marshy banks of the Trinity River.
When I arrived, the victim is about 150 yards at that time, down to the bank of the river. We had a young white female. Her dress was pulled up. So I'm thinking sexual assault, and I can clearly see it's a homicide. She didn't have any kind of identifying information. I could tell that she had been strangled with something just because of the abrasions on the throat. I can still see her just like she was laying, just like it was yesterday. I still see it here.
"40 miles across the bay, in the Gulf Coast town of Texas City, the family of 13-year-old Krystal Jean Baker is on edge. Earlier that day, Krystal left the house while under her grandmother's care.
She wanted to go be with her friends, but her grandma said no, and of course she got in an argument with her. She walked down the street and she called me, and I was at work.
Krystal tells her mother that she's calling from the corner store.
I was a little angry at Krystal when I talked to her, and I told her, I said, Krystal, I said, you need to go back to your grandma's. But about an hour later, my mom calls me and tells me she didn't show up. I was trying to get in touch with everybody, and I kept calling her friends. There was no sign of Krystal.
When we first got the call with Krystal Baker, we assumed that she had run away. Krystal was 13 years old. She rebelled against her grandmother. It seemed she had just gone somewhere and didn't call home. In the Texas City Police Department, they made a report. They gave out a bolo to the patrol officers to be on the lookout for Krystal Baker.
Across the bay, deputies are investigating the murder of the Jane Doe found in the boggy wetlands of Chambers County.
There's no witnesses. We're looking around for any kind of evidence. We picked up cigarette pack, cold drink bottle, anything that was in probably about a 50-foot radius. As I'm looking around the area, I don't see signs of a scuffle in the dirt.
I think it was pretty clear that she was killed somewhere else and then dumped because the crime scene was just her.
Finally, 2 weeks after the dead Jane Doe is found, investigator Moon gets a call from the Texas City Police about a missing girl.
I thought I was going to go down there and look at pictures of Krystal. You know, good pictures, you know, to put in the newspaper or something. And then they put down all these graphic pictures of my daughter, how they found her, what she looked like, for me to identify her. And I seen the little freckles she had right here. I knew it was my daughter.
As police search for new clues, the medical examiner releases his findings.
It was ligature strangulation was the cause of death. She was strangled with something other than the hands. Because of the injuries, it did look like she'd been sexually assaulted, but they didn't find any kind of traces, any body fluid on her person. Her dress was sent to the crime lab as well as the fingernail scrapings and clippings. The lab told us that there just wasn't enough there for them to tell you what you needed to know. The clothing and the fingernail scrapings and clippings were all put into evidence and secured at our facility. I was hoping we may eventually have technology that would help us find something useful in the evidence that we had.
The investigation into Krystal's death slows to a crawl like the sluggish waters of a bayou, and the case goes cold.
I became the sheriff after the sheriff's office started this case back from what had relatively turned cold and making that cold case hot again. In this particular case, because it was a cold case for a long time, they were able to get that evidence resubmitted and reanalyzed. The dress and some fingernail scrapings.
This time when the sample was tested, they got a profile. Then it was loaded into CODIS, the national database.
In September of 2010, we got the call we had been waiting for all those years.
Brad is the one that called me and told me, you know, you're not going to believe this. We had a hit on Krystal's killer. The sheriff's office sent me a picture of him, and they said his name is Kevin Edison Smith. In 2010, Kevin Smith got arrested in Louisiana.
Smith was arrested on a drug charge in Point Coupee Parish, located in Louisiana's Bayou Country, 300 miles from Texas City.
He subsequently had his DNA taken and put in the CODIS database.
The fact that we had his genetic profile in the system, it's huge. I mean, it's a big deal.
In 1996, he was working as a contractor at the time at one of the refineries, very close to where Krystal Baker's body was discovered.
The day we arrested him, I was actually able to put my handcuffs on him. We got his DNA, which is something I'd been waiting for all those years.
Later that week, lab results for the DNA sample come back.
Sure enough, it's confirmed he is our man.
Kevin Smith was charged with capital murder because he committed a murder during or in the commission of an aggravated sexual assault. It would be a death penalty case.
As prosecutors prepare for trial, they receive a surprising request.
Kevin Smith wanted to confess if I took the death penalty off the table. I knew that a confession would help. We would use it in trial. And I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to hear what he had to say.
So when I seen her walking down the highway and picked her up, then I just grabbed her, you know. And I had choked and everything. Next thing I know, she stopped, she stopped breathing.
If he says that he used his hands, then that goes more in line to it being an accident.
Something was put around her neck. Because usually when you choke somebody, your thumbs will break that bone right there.
Yeah.
Hers wasn't. It was something was wrapped around her neck.
I had it was just a leather strap. I got out of my truck and picked it up, laid it down there, and got my truck. And I just drove.
The jury reaches a verdict within 30 minutes.
They find Kevin Smith guilty of capital murder, which carries an automatic life sentence. He won't ever get out. I was just glad that it was over. Glad that we got the result that we wanted, that Krystal deserved.
Following the trial, Krystal's mother continues her fight for justice.
The Krystal Baker law in Texas passed in 2019. We got 24 felonies that you could be tested for once you get arrested. Even in the short time that has been the law in Texas, we have solved over 250 cold cases. Krystal is being remembered and will forever be remembered as changing the law in the state of Texas. That's a big deal.